The Cathar Heresy, also known as Albigensianism, was a significant religious movement that emerged in the 12th and 13th centuries in southern France and northern Italy. The Cathars presented a substantial challenge to the Roman Catholic Church due to their dualist theology, rigorous ascetic practices, and the establishment of an alternative ecclesiastical structure. This comprehensive overview explores the origins, beliefs, practices, and suppression of the Cathar movement. Origins and historical context. The roots of Catharism can be traced back to earlier dualist movements, such as the Bogomils in the Balkans and the Paulicians in Asia Minor. These movements shared similarities with ancient Gnostic beliefs, which emphasized the duality of good and evil. The term Cathar is derived from the Greek word kathroi, meaning pure ones, reflecting their aspiration for spiritual purity. Catharism emerged in a context of growing dissatisfaction with the Catholic Church's wealth, corruption, and perceived moral laxity. The economic prosperity of the Languedoc region in southern France, coupled with its relatively autonomous political structure and vibrant urban centers, provided fertile ground for the spread of Cathar beliefs. The movement gained considerable support among the nobility and common folk alike, leading to a significant following. Core beliefs and theology. Cathar theology was fundamentally dualistic, positing the existence of two opposing forces, a good, spiritual God and an evil, material God. This cosmology underpinned their worldview and ethical system. 1. Dualism. Cathars believed in the existence of two deities, the good God, who created the spiritual realm, and the evil God, who created the material world. The evil God was often identified with the God of the Old Testament, while the good God was associated with the New Testament and Jesus Christ. This dualism led to a rejection of the material world, which was seen as corrupt and a prison for the soul. 2. The nature of humanity. Cathars held that human souls were originally angelic beings trapped in physical bodies by the evil God. The goal of human existence was to escape the cycle of reincarnation and return to the spiritual realm. Salvation was achieved through gnosis, knowledge, and rigorous asceticism. 3. Christology. Cathars had a unique view of Jesus Christ, rejecting the notion of his physical incarnation. They believed that Christ was a purely spiritual being who did not suffer or die in a physical sense. The Cathar interpretation of Christ's mission was to teach humanity how to escape the material world and achieve spiritual liberation. 4. The sacraments. The Cathars rejected the Catholic sacraments, particularly the Eucharist and baptism by water. They considered these rituals as tainted by materialism. Instead, they practiced a single sacrament called the consolamentum, a form of spiritual baptism that involved the laying on of hands and the recitation of prayers. The consolamentum was typically administered to dying believers, but it could also be received earlier as a commitment to a life of purity. Ecclesiastical structure and practices. The Cathars established their own parallel ecclesiastical hierarchy, distinct from the Catholic Church. This structure was led by the perfecti, or perfect ones, who had received the consolamentum and committed to a life of celibacy, non-violence, and abstention from meat, dairy, and other worldly pleasures. The perfecti served as spiritual leaders, preaching and administering the consolamentum. 1. The perfecti. The perfecti were revered for their piety and asceticism. They lived in small communities, often in remote areas, and dedicated themselves to prayer, meditation, and manual labor. They were itinerant preachers, traveling from village to spread their beliefs and provide spiritual guidance. 2. The credentes. The majority of Cathar believers were known as credentes, or believers. They were not held to the same strict standards as the perfecti but were expected to support them and strive towards spiritual purity. The credentes could receive the consolamentum on their deathbeds, ensuring their salvation. 3. Community and worship. Cathar communities were marked by their simplicity and communal living. Worship services, called assemblies, were held in homes or other modest venues. These gatherings included the recitation of prayers, hymns, and readings from the New Testament, particularly the Gospel of John, which was highly regarded by the Cathars. The perfecti would also deliver sermons, emphasizing the spiritual nature of Christ and the need for purity. The Catholic Church's response. The rise of Catharism posed a significant threat to the authority and unity of the Catholic Church. The Church responded with a combination of preaching, persuasion, and force to combat the spread of the heresy. 1. Preaching missions. Initially, the Church attempted to counter Catharism through preaching missions led by figures such as Bernard of Clairvaux and Peter of Castelnau. These efforts aimed to win back the hearts and minds of the Cathar faithful by emphasizing orthodox teachings and addressing the moral shortcomings within the Church. 2. The Albigensian Crusade. When peaceful measures failed, Pope Innocent III launched the Albigensian Crusade, 1209 to 1229, against the Cathars. This military campaign was led by northern French nobles, motivated by both religious zeal and the promise of land and wealth. The crusade was marked by extreme violence and brutality, with entire towns and cities being massacred. The most infamous episode of the crusade was the siege of Béziers in 1209, where thousands of inhabitants were slaughtered, including many Catholics, under the command "Kill them all, God will know his own." The crusade devastated the Languedoc region and significantly weakened the Cathar movement. 3. The Inquisition. In the aftermath of the Albigensian Crusade, the Catholic Church established the medieval Inquisition to root out remaining Cathar heretics. The Inquisition employed systematic methods of interrogation, investigation, and punishment to identify and eliminate heretical beliefs. The process often involved torture and severe penalties, including execution by burning. 4. The end of Catharism. By the mid-13th century, the Cathar movement was largely suppressed. The last major stronghold, the fortress of Montségur, fell in 1244, resulting in the execution of over 200 Cathar perfecti who refused to renounce their faith. Despite the harsh measures, small pockets of Cathar believers persisted into the early 14th century, but they were eventually eradicated. Legacy and historical significance. The Cathar heresy had a profound impact on medieval European history and the development of the Catholic Church. Its legacy can be seen in several areas. 1. Religious reforms. The challenge posed by Catharism prompted the Catholic Church to undertake significant reforms. The Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 addressed many of the issues raised by the Cathars, including clerical corruption, the need for better pastoral care, and the enforcement of orthodox doctrine. 2. The Inquisition. The establishment of the Inquisition marked a turning point in the Church's approach to heresy. The methods and structures developed during the medieval Inquisition laid the groundwork for later inquisitorial practices, including the Spanish Inquisition. 3. Cultural memory. The Cathar heresy left a lasting cultural memory, particularly in the Languedoc region. The tragic and dramatic history of the Cathars has inspired numerous works of literature, art, and historical scholarship. Modern interest in the Cathars often romanticizes their beliefs and portrays them as noble victims of religious persecution. 4. Influence on modern spiritual movements. Cathar beliefs and practices have found resonance in some modern spiritual movements that emphasize dualism, asceticism, and alternative forms of Christianity. The New Age movement, in particular, has shown interest in Catharism as part of its broader exploration of esoteric and mystical traditions. The Cathar heresy represents a significant chapter in the history of medieval Christianity. Its dualist theology, rigorous asceticism, and establishment of a parallel ecclesiastical structure challenged the dominance of the Catholic Church and led to one of the most brutal campaigns of religious persecution in history. The suppression of the Cathars had far-reaching consequences for the Church, influencing its approach to heresy, doctrinal enforcement, and institutional reform. Despite their ultimate defeat, the Cathars left an enduring legacy that continues to capture the imagination of historians, writers, and spiritual seekers. Their story serves as a reminder of the complex and often tumultuous relationship between religious innovation and institutional orthodoxy, highlighting the diverse and dynamic nature of medieval Christianity.